So good morning, everyone, and grand rising. My name is Reverend Dr. Alice Reid, and I'm the spiritual director here, and I'm so happy to be with you on this holiday weekend. I hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. Whether you were able to be with family or not, hopefully you might have been with a family of choice as opposed to a family of birth, or perhaps it was a great time for you to sort of, hibernate in your own space. Whatever you did, I trust that it was a good experience for you. I did not have the Thanksgiving that I had intended, but I did have a lovely Thanksgiving. I was not able to be with my family for one reason or another, but I am grateful to be here with all of you this morning on this glorious day in Southern California. Sometimes our talk titles seem a little odd. Did anybody read the talk title for this morning and think, what? The soul of an octopus. The soul of an octopus, yeah. What does an octopus have to do with anything that you might hear in a spiritual center? Well, we are talking about its soul, right? One of the things that I have learned over the years of being a metaphysician and a religious scientist is that I am able to find meaning in almost everything. But sometimes finding meaning in everything can really cause us to go a little out there, right? And so I can find meaning in everything, but then I can be grounded in principle. And so as I looked at this particular talk topic, I tried to think to myself, and I looked in our Science of Mind magazine, available for sale in the lobby, and at Barnes & Noble. I looked in our Science of Mind magazine, and at our declarations of principle, and I found this one to be the most apropos for finding meaning in today's talk. And that is that we believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God. We understand that the life of all is God. Absolutely, this principle isn't just true for you. This principle is true for the person sitting next to you. Its principle is true for your neighbors. This principle is true for people you don't agree with. This principle is true for that person that might have rear-ended you on the 5 on your way to see your son. And hurt your brand new car. Everybody was fine. This principle is true for even people who we consider to perpetrate terrible crimes against other people. We really do believe that God is in all life, that all life is a representation of God. And so as we look at this topic of the soul of an octopus, it actually comes right from a lovely little book that I found in our local little beach bookstore here in San Clemente. I knew this was coming up, and I was so surprised when it just fell off the shelf in front of me, kinda. And it's written by a woman by the name of Sy Montgomery, and it's entitled The Soul of the Octopus. And in it, the author tells us the adventures of meeting and experiencing various octopus. Now, if you're like me, you're probably familiar with the mythologized octopus, right? Like if you think about it, in our literature, maybe the image that comes to my mind is the same image that comes to your mind, which is some giant sea monster with its arms all around a 17th century sailboat. Maybe he's got a sailor or two, and he's waving it around in his arm and bringing the sailboat down. Like, that's sort of the sea monster idea of what octopuses are. Interesting fun fact, octopi is not plural for octopuses. So it is octopuses. You might be thinking, why didn't she say octopi? And I have a couple of other fun facts to share with you, but I will tell you that in this book, she describes her curiosity, against the mythologized idea of octopuses, and she has what she describes as almost a mystical experience. So here are some interesting facts about octopuses. They have neurons or brains in each of their 8 arms. That's pretty amazing to me. Each of their arms is independent and can think of it by itself. It can taste, it can touch, each arm solves problems on its own. It can independently decide things. In other words, the consciousness is distributive, not centralized. Does that sound familiar at all to you, consciousness being distributive and not centralized? In our philosophy, we teach that there is only one God, but that it is not centralized. We're not puppets on a string that are all being animated by this one God. No, we're individualized expressions of the one. I thought that was a kind of fun analogy when I was looking at that fact about octopuses. Some of the the not so deep facts about octopus is they can change color in an instant, allowing them to adapt to their environment. They can recognize individual human beings. They know the difference between the person that feeds them and the person that cleans their cage and the person who annoys them. They behave in, different ways for different people. They can hold grudges. Yes, in her book, she shares a story about one octopus that didn't like one of its handlers and it has this ability to spray water from a fountain within itself, and it would always spray this person. And as a matter of fact, this one particular intern didn't see the octopus for several years, came back to visit, and it sprayed her right away. That's pretty amazing. So it can hold grudges. It remembers kindness, and it prefers some people over others. They have unique personalities and are very playful. And scientists claim that playfulness is a sign of advanced intelligence. Now, some of you might be describing me as playful. I'm just saying, right? They dream. They can grow back any limbs that are cut off or injured. They have 3 hearts, 2 that pump blood to the gills and 1 that pumps blood to their appendages. They can taste with their skin. She describes feeding an octopus, and the handler would put the fish or crabs lower down on its extremity, and it would use its suckers to pull it in towards its beak, like it was tasting the flavor with each of its little suckers. And I thought this was really fascinating that their species is 300 plus million years old. Like, they've been around a long time. Fascinating, right? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really fascinating. And what does that have to do with spirituality? Well, I think it has a lot to do with this idea that sea monsters, or monsters in general, right, we villainize. We villainize things. We've been villainizing octopuses for centuries. And yet when this one particular naturalist met the octopus, and she has chapter after chapter of meeting different personalities at different aquariums. It's really fascinating. And so she approaches the prejudice and the bias that she had around these beings with curiosity and open-mindedness, and she discovered they were not evil monsters at all, but just misrepresented creatures. And so I think that we all have monsters, right? We all have monsters in our experiences, things, events, people that we have just villainized or pushed away. In recovery circles, there's a saying that sort of speaks to that, and it goes like this, that we don't want to have contempt prior to investigation. That oftentimes we make assumptions and we have contempt about a person, a place, or a thing prior to investigating what it's really about, what it's there to show me, what it's there to help us understand. And so I'd like you to consider what some of the monsters are in your life that you might want to investigate. Like, I know, who's got time, right? But honestly, if you and I'll tell you in my own experience, right? But when one has, so I won't point any fingers, put my hand behind my back. If one has a lot of energy around resisting something or someone or some institution, there might be something there for you. I mean, it's, your energy is precious. Why are you spending it resisting something that maybe there's something there for you to learn more about it? So I'll tell you about my own invitation to explore a monster of my own, and the monster that I had to explore was, at the time I called westernized Christianity. And today you might call it conservative Christianity. And it was definitely something I wanted nothing to do with. I had contempt for it. As a matter of fact, I remember being in a workshop, and it was in a remote location. It was a little Jesus-y for me. And I remember walking out of the workshop and seriously considering leaving. I was out of there. I didn't want to hear any of this because it was this place that I didn't want to investigate at all. And it was an hour car ride. I had no car, and it would have been an hour car ride to the airport. I would have had to get a ticket and fly home, and so I stuck it out. And the interesting thing that happened was that I hit an insight into what that villainization was all about, where it had really given birth within me. And I remembered being a teenager, and I and my boyfriend were exploring Christianity. We were going to Bible study, and I was going to this conservative Christian church, and I was still in the discovery phases when he unfortunately was hit by a truck and killed on the freeway. And I had misplaced that grief right in the pocket of this idea of Christianity. Like, if God was real, if Jesus was really the Son of God and my protector, then why would this happen to me? Now, obviously, I didn't have that conscious thought pattern, but I was able to see it at that moment. And when I was able to see it at that moment, it unlocked my bias, my prejudice. It gave me the willingness to explore. And what I found was a beautiful teaching of love that was anchored in ancient Christian mysticism. And I would have missed all of that if I had continued to villainize the monster that was before me. It was a huge barrier, and it was difficult for me to even consider moving through it until I was open enough to have some curiosity around it. And coincidentally today, when we were in our old place of gathering, this is the Sunday where I would have an Advent wreath, and I would do a little metaphysical Advent ritual with you. And that is one of the things that that came forward for me as I began to explore rituals and Christian mysticism. I found a depth and a beauty, and actually growing up as a little Catholic girl, I went all the way to my first Holy Communion. I was able to reclaim the best of that. And because I'm a religious scientist, I was able to make meaning of it, meaning that was steeped in principle for me. That doesn't mean, I'm not going to tell you that I'm subscribing completely to what was that villainized Western Christianity, but I can tell you that I was able to find some beauty in it. I was able to discover a piece of myself that I had left behind. I like to say I threw out the baby Jesus with the bathwater. But honestly, I needed to get rid of the baby Jesus so that I could discover the mature, beautiful doctrine of love that is within some of the ancient teachings that the master teacher, Jesus of Nazareth, is given credit for bringing forward to us. So this Advent exercise that we typically do is an exercise. It's a ritual of being able to rebirth the light, to bring it forward to us. And this year it's a little different. We're not going to have a Christmas Eve service, but we're going to do a solstice service on the solstice, which happens to be December 21st. And so I'm going to invite you to consider what some of the more earth-based spiritual practices do, and that is to do a annual return of the sun ritual. That looks a lot like Advent. But the truth is, and if you study any of the ancient Christian practices, many of them were birthed in pagan practices. And so I'm going to invite you to consider lighting your own candle and asking some questions. What I'll tell you is that for us to go within, because the light is diminished this time of year. That's the thing I love about the solstice practice, is it gives us an opportunity. You know, it's easy to see the light when the days are long and bright, but when it gets dark, and we're in Southern California, so we usually see sun, but back east, it was cloud cover most of the day, and you could really be challenged with not having enough sunlight. And so in this time, it's an opportunity for us to go deeper, to go into that place of contemplation. And I would invite you to find 4 candles. And you can do it any time of the week. You might want to do it Sunday evening, and light your candles one at a time. And so this week, as you light your candle, in this metaphysical sun wreath Advent ritual that I'm inviting you to practice, I have a couple of prompts for you to reflect on in light of our discussion about octopuses and monsters and contempt prior to investigation and principle. You could ask the question, and I've given these questions to the people who print things out, so it'll be in our newsletter, and it'll be in my blog, and in the Conscious Connections, you'll have an opportunity to discuss them as well. So the first question to consider is, what wants to be reborn in you this time? What of year? What wants to be reborn in you? The second question is, what do you hope for? The third question might be a little more challenging. What monsters do you need to face? And the fourth question, what might they teach you as you are willing to be with your monsters in the dark as we await the return of the light? I have to tell you, I have that monster I shared with you is only one. Only one of my own monsters. And I have found a great deal of freedom when I'm willing to explore those places that scare me, those places where I may have great resistance. I have found resistance when it rears its head in my life is often the cue that there's time to do some spiritual work, that there's time to lean in when I have a lot of resistance around something. Because what I know is that as a spiritual being having a human experience, that my life and the life of all life is meant to be free. We're meant to experience freedom. And so when we're experiencing constriction, when we're experiencing resistance, when we're experiencing anger or fear, well, those aren't organic to our nature, but they are telltale signs that we might have an opportunity or invitation before us. And so you can use this ritual as an opportunity to invite something new in while we share this longest nights of the year together. And so each week I will have some prompts for you and an invitation to light a candle in your home. And even on December 14th, when the Baha'i Center does their soul journey here, I'll write a little something for you. We'll send it out to you, and we'll have some questions for you. And it could be a really wonderful time of discovery. And my hope for you in this first Sunday in Advent of hope, my hope for you is that you'll find greater freedom, that you'll find release, that you'll find a more authentic experience of this thing called life. And so let's brave our monsters together in these darkest days. And I'll close with this brief story about Sy Montgomery's first encounter with the Pacific octopus, her first sea monster, if you will. It was named Athena. And she met Athena in a New England aquarium. And when she first met Athena, she approached the octopus tank with a lot of curiosity, and she was expecting curiosity from the sea creature itself. But what she experienced could only be described as mystical. As Sy reached her arms into the tank, Athena slowly reached out one arm and then another and then another, and her suckers were making gentle contact with Sy's skin. And Montgomery writes that she could feel the octopus tasting her skin. Yeah. Not as prey, but as presence. And as Athena pulled her closer with a surprising amount of strength, she then softened her pull. It was almost gentle, as if to say, I see you. And I know you. Sy said she never experienced anything like it. There was emotion and connection and awareness, and it was not imagined. She felt it. And then something extraordinary happened as Sy was touching the skin of the octopus. Suddenly, a gentle rose color appeared in the skin of the octopus. And that color, rose, is actually known by scientists to mean that it's a sign of pleasure, contentment, or trust. And in that moment, our author understood that this creature recognized her, that it chose to engage with her, and that it was expressing a form of affection. Wow. She said it felt like communion. Yeah. I have experienced communion in spiritual practice, in connection with another person. I have experienced communion and union with animals. And for me, I know that that is the touch point of our spiritual nature when we can experience that kind of communion with one another. So this holiday season, as we move through Advent a little differently this year than we have the last couple of years, I invite you to lean in, to lean into your resistance, to look at your monsters, to be willing to have a different experience, and to have hope that freedom is on the other side of it. Thank you very much. So we have a lovely practice of affirmative prayer. And so join me, if you will, in this affirmative prayer, will you? I invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze. And to just breathe the air so freely available to you, knowing that this air is the beautiful representation of spirit that is forever filling us and helping us to release things we don't need. And so I know that this divine presence is everything we are. We can never be separate from it, but we are individuated. We are independent. We are given that beautiful, priceless gift of free will. And so I know for each one, the power and the courage to have that free will to investigate and to explore, to look for our monsters, to be willing to let go, to be willing to have a different experience, to be willing to see what the invitation is that our resistance brings to us. And so I know for each one a greater freedom, a relaxing into this thing we call life, knowing that we are one with all life and there are no exceptions, and carrying that truth with us on this journey I've called Advent. And so I know for each one the power and presence of release as we let this go and we let it be with gratitude. And if you agree with me, please say, and so it is.